Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital, a podcast about video games and the stories they tell. My name is Caitlin Bailey, and I have with me my co-host, Mark. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm glad to be with you, glad to be talking about games, Caitlin.
Me too. Today, we're going to be talking about, as always, the games that we are currently playing. Then we're going to follow it up talking about Sin and Punishment, a Nintendo 64 game for our retro segment, gaming opinions on old school funware, aka GOOF. Then we're going to talk about our feature game, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And I'm sure that Mark could say it much more French than me, but that's okay. And then finally, we are going to, Mark is going to shout out something he's looking forward to. I haven't been paying attention to anything lately, so I got nothing. So Mark, what have you been playing lately?
In anticipation of the Capcom Fighting Collection 2 and my great enthusiasm over the recent fan translation of Capcom vs. SNK 2, I've been exploring some of the other titles that are going to be included in that collection. In part, this is driven by my enthusiasm over the recent Miu Flip, which is a marvelous handheld, undone by scurrilous calumny on the internet. Let me tell you something about the way the internet reacts to clamshells, Caitlin. If a single clamshell undergoes any kind of mechanical failure, there will be 75 Reddit posts about it before the hinge has even finished snapping. Meanwhile, if any other kind of device suffers any other kind of failure, just routine failure, like for example, your 35XX Plus fell, a couple feet onto carpet, and its screen shattered into a million pieces. Things fall apart. Entropy always wins. And I'm not here to throw shade on the fragility of any electronic devices. It's just that clamshells seem to be subjected to additional scrutiny. Anytime a new clamshell gets released, there's 73,000 think pieces about, what have they done with the hinge, before there's any other coverage of it. And yes, in this case, I will acknowledge that the gray Miu Flips seem to have a high rate of failure for the hinge. I'm going to make no bones about it. I have the lovely yellow one, though, and the yellow one seemed to be, by and large, to be very, very good. Anyway, the Miu Flip has sticks, and so therefore I wanted to play some games that benefited from having the analog stick available, and so I was playing a lot of Power Stone 2. I love me some Power Stone. Power Stone 2, though, and this is something that I'm going to be talking about later in GOOF, it leans into the crazy in a very, very good way, because Power Stone was kind of an early attempt at Capcom's version of sort of a party arena fighter, but it was limited to 2 players. And I'm fine with Power Stone. It's far more of a fighting game than Power Stone 2 is. Power Stone 2 is much more like Smash Brothers, but it's a kind of Smash Brothers that I can get behind. Now, some people would take offense to the implication that Smash Brothers isn't a fighting game. Sure, fine, whatever. You can slice genres however you want. That's cool. But one must acknowledge that there is a world of difference between something like Power Stone 2 and Smash Brothers on the one hand, and something like Street Fighter and Tekken on the other. I mean, they're just going for different kinds of things and different kinds of vibes. And yeah, there's a world of difference between Street Fighter and Tekken as well, but they are more alike than either of them is like something like Smash Brothers or Power Stone. Anyway, I've never really vibed with Smash Brothers. I don't like the cast, I don't like the mechanisms, I don't like the fundamental dynamic, I don't like a lot of the assumptions related to it, I don't like the control scheme. Power Stone, on the other hand, makes me very, very happy. It is the kind of zany that I appreciate. Very much like Smash Brothers, there's a litany of items that get released onto the stage. A flamethrower, a ray gun, a rubber mallet, a kitty, a magic staff. It's just constant deluge of nonsense, which is wonderful. The stages themselves are really well designed. You might start off the battle on an airship, complete with cannons that you can crew and fire at your opponents. Then the airship falls apart, and there's this brief falling segment where you desperately compete with your fellow combatants over a small number of umbrellas that will then allow you to float safely to the next stage of the arena, or instead of face planting after reaching terminal velocity, which will cost a fair degree of your life if you do not end up with one of the scarce umbrellas. Anyway, this is just but a sampling of the lunacy that Power Stone 2 has. On top of this is the fundamental conceit of Power Stone, the reason why it gets its name, in that you're competing for the eponymous Power Stones. If you get 3 Power Stones, you transform into a super powerful version of whatever character you are, and you have a brief period of time of taking reduced damage and gonzo screen clearing moves. And that lends a further element of sort of tempo to the proceedings. Like, how you play is far, far different based on how many stones you have, how many stones your opponent has, whether they've actively transformed, whether you're in transformation state, etc. And so it's a nice kind of linchpin around which a lot of the craziness revolves. Rather than rendering it more madcap, I will freely admit, when you're running around trying to dodge energy blasts from a super pumped up Saiyan chef, it is absolutely madcap and zany, but it kind of serves as a stabilizing influence in that it kind of drives the tempo of the match more so than whether or not your opponent has a rubber ducky or a rubber mallet in their hands. All of this is slightly undone by one of my pet peeves of all the Power Stone series, and that is the voice clips you hear far too much of. I don't know. How much experience do you have with Power Stone, Caitlin?
0, actually.
Oh, it's a great series, but I have to say my least favorite element of it is that every time you get a Power Stone, the announcer, and Capcom, right around the turn of the century, had these great Anglophone, deep-voiced announcers. They cast these native English speakers, and they said, okay, serve as the announcer for a game. This was true of Street Fighter Alpha 3. This was true of Capcom vs. SNK games. This is true of Power Stone as well. And the announcer goes, powerful, every time you pick up a Power Stone. And that's great. The first 200 times you hear it, maybe? And then it starts to grate. Even worse than that is the same announcer, anytime you lose a Power Stone, because a variety of strong hits will cause the Power Stone to come flying out of you, therefore letting someone else grab it. The announcer goes, oh no! And it's just so grating. It is, I would gladly lose twice as many Power Stones every time I got hit if I didn't have to hear that voice sample.
Yeah.
I've been hearing that voice sample on and off for 2 decades, and I've been sick of it for a long time. It's just a little too much. The character voices are great. The character voices are still fine. It's just the same. It's just too repetitive. They have to understand that every time you use a voice clip like that, you have to ask yourself, how often during a match is this going to be broadcast? And it's just too many times. So there's that.
Okay.
But there is a fair amount of replay value in Power Stone 2 because, as I've mentioned, there's this inventory of wild items, but at the start of the game, that's only a subset of the total number of items that are available, not entirely unlike later iterations of the Smash games. You can expand on the inventory of things that get spawned over the course of a stage, and thus blow up the level of insanity of what's going on in a given match through an adventure mode, and there's this weird fusion mode where you collect a whole bunch of items and then mash them together. It's pretty obtuse about how to get the new items, but fortunately there are a variety of helpful websites that, one in particular I enjoy. You just tell it what you have. You just, with checkboxes, you tell it your total inventory, and then it just spits out everything you can get through various combinations. And that I very much appreciate. That having been said, it's still somewhat time-consuming, but I find it's worth it. I very much enjoy Power Stone 2. It is not what you would call a tightly balanced, fair, competitive environment, but it is absolutely what I'm looking for in the context of an arena fighter. And it is great to play with it in a variety of different contexts. As I said, I've been messing around with it on the Mii U Flip. I've also been playing around with it on the new Retroid Pocket Flip 2, also a clamshell. Clamshells are the way to go. Preach. And it is a very good showcase of the Dreamcast's abilities, which was a console that was sadly underexplored and gone too soon. But overall, I regard the Capcom development at the time is very powerful. Oh wait, no, it's crawled into my head. I'm too far gone, Caitlin. I'm doomed. Oh no! Oh crap! It's too. Oh.
Oh no! So Power Stone 2 originally came out for the Dreamcast. Is that right?
It originally came out on an arcade board that was basically the Dreamcast, and so in the grand tradition of a lot of ports of around the late 20th century, it was a very easy port job to bring it over to the Dreamcast. And so it was launched in the arcades in 2000, which was just a year after the first Power Stone, and it got a console port before the year was out. And one of the many great things that the Dreamcast did was it had 4-player capability right out of the box, not entirely unlike the Nintendo 64, which lent itself to a great experience. The only serious downside, so the Dreamcast had a tremendous fighting game library. Utterly tremendous. Peerless, really.
Mm-hmm.
The only serious downside was that the default Dreamcast controller was terrible for most traditional 2D fighting games. Like, really bad. The D-pad was awful. The shoulders were early analog shoulders, and that's not particularly good for fighting games. They were serviceable, I guess. But for a 3D fighter like Power Stone 2 or an arena fighter, the analog joystick is exactly what you want, and so it works very, very well.
As far as like arena fighters go, and I realize you already said that Smash Brothers is not really a fighting game, and that's fine. But Smash Brothers is like the only
some
style.
People look. Don't pin me to that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put words in your mouth. But Smash Brothers is the only one that I've ever played. And I know that with Smash Brothers, you either can do like timed matches or stock so that you lose lives. How does a match work in Power Stone?
In comparison, it's much more traditional in point of fact, in that every person has a life bar, and you win just by getting rid of everyone's life bar. Now, it's a pretty extensive life bar. You need to wail on someone for rather a while. That allows the different stage progressions to a little bit of time to breathe. It's not that matches are especially long. It's just that they're staged in such a way that you can see the stage evolve. You can move from one set piece to another. And it's not the case that someone getting into their more powered up form is automatically the end of the match, because they don't have enough time in their powered up form to get you down to 0 life if you're spending any time at all trying to defend yourself.
Okay.
And so the matches actually are pretty, like, an arcade run is very, very brisk. The longest thing that you're going to be doing actually is the boss stage, which is not very good. It's kind of grueling. It's this endurance thing. But whatever. It's mostly the PvP stuff that I enjoy. And the 4-player free-for-all matches are wonderful. You can also do it co-op, which is fine. But again, I don't have any friends to play fighting games with, so I'm mostly just playing 4-player free-for-all against the computer.
Okay, yeah, I'm bummed that I missed out on Power Stone 2 when it was on Dreamcast. I didn't end up having very many Dreamcast games, although I treasured each and every one I had, especially Choo Choo Rocket.
Well, tell you what, when Capcom Fighting Collection 2 comes out, maybe we should give it a go.
Yeah, we should, for sure. I would love to try it.
All right. I will slum it, given that, as I say, it will not have the best available version of Capcom vs. SNK 2.
Yes,
It'll have the inferior PlayStation version, not the superior Dreamcast translation done by Derek Pascarella.
Unbelievable.
It's a whole thing. What have you been up to lately, Caitlin?
This week, I played some Forever Skies. It, I believe, recently had its 1.0 release. Unfortunately, the Steam reviews haven't been treating it so hot. It's currently mixed.
Ooh.
Which is funny, because before release, it was rated higher, and I haven't fully looked into everything. But anyway, I had fun with my, 1 3-hour session or whatever that I played this week. It's very similar to the game Raft, which I don't know if you're familiar with that one, Mark, but in Raft, it's a post-apocalyptic world. There is like a biblical-style flood, and, you are on a raft. And you have to, you gather items from little islands that you find, or just there's so much pollution and just trash in the water. And you can just fish, scrap metal and plastic and stuff out of the water. And you use all those materials to build your raft. Well, Forever Skies is more of a sci-fi version of that, where instead of a flood, the world is just, there's like some kind of ecological disaster. The world is very gross, very polluted. Everything is broken. But there's lots of trash floating around in the sky, and you can just grab it. And then you can scavenge like old buildings and stuff like that. So anyway, the gist is that you've returned to Earth because you're trying to find a cure for a disease called the Gray Plague, which is afflicting the other people that you left Earth with, I guess. And they believe that the cure can be found somewhere on the planet. So we were playing 4-player co-op, and it's been pretty fun. It's a little bit, there's some stuff that I don't love. I think that you have to manage your thirst, your hunger, how tired you are. You have to repair stuff on your ship when it breaks. You have to replace your stupid water filters like every 5 minutes, it feels like. So there's a bunch of things that can feel pretty tedious, and I can't imagine playing solo, like at least when we play in a group of people, everyone can do different stuff. You're not always going to be doing the same horrible, repetitive task over and over. But it's been really fun to explore the world and see what it's like. So I've been enjoying Forever Skies. I don't know how much I'll keep playing it, but if it's like Raft in that, you go to a certain number of areas, you get through the story and you're done, we'll probably do that.
What about the fighting the bugs?
So we haven't done too much bug fighting. Every now and then there's this bug that kind of flies along and then attaches itself to one of our engines, and we just laser him until he falls off and dies.
Okay.
I'm led to believe that there are other creatures, but we haven't run into any of them yet. Just the one that wants to attach to our ship.
The Steam launch trailer definitely plays up combat against bugs rather substantially.
Okay.
And I gotta say, compared to Repo, it looks much more terrifying.
Okay. Well, we haven't seen anything scary yet.
Okay, like some giant praying mantis dude going hog on you in first person perspective is not my idea of even a post-apocalyptic kind of crafting experience. More like a white knuckle action thing.
Interesting. Yeah, in Raft, there was only, there was more than one antagonist, but the main antagonist was the shark. And the shark has a name. I can't remember what his name is. But he just, every time you're in the water, he comes up and tries to take a nibble out of you. He's not very nice. But there isn't a good shark equivalent in Forever Skies. At least not yet. He also attacks the raft sometimes, so I guess in that way he's kind of like that little bug that likes to bite your engine.
Given that we are going to be discussing around theology, or at least mentioning sin and punishment briefly, I just hasten to point out this is a bit of theological interpretation that always amused me. According to the traditional presentation in the Abrahamic tradition of Noah's flood, after the flood, God makes it very clear that he will not annihilate humanity through a flood. This is one of those very precise, you got to check the fine print types of promises, because as anybody can tell you, he did not foreclose the possibility of destroying humanity through any other type of disaster.
Yes. All right. So yeah, that's Forever Skies.
Well, if you engage in more Forever Skies, I'd be curious to hear what your development. I'm still, for one, am waiting with bated breath on more Infinity Nikki, especially now that it's on Steam. You have not
it's on
followed
Steam
through on
now.
your promise to deliver more Infinity Nikki news.
You're right, I have not.
However, you have an endless store of goodwill because you have decided to start watching Midnight Mass. So until
I finished it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about that in a different venue.
Yes.
So on the topic of such things, we are going to be talking about sin and punishment, not in general and not in the context of the Second Covenant and not in the context of Midnight Mass, but in the context of GOOF, Gaming Opinions and Old School Funware. So Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Earth, was developed by Treasure. We seem to be running into a lot of Treasure games because Treasure has a very, very devoted fan base. They're the same crew that did Ikaruga and Guardian Heroes, Gunstar Heroes. And so this is the title they released for the N64, which is kind of a rail shooter. And it never made it to North America until there was a recent port for the Switch. And Caitlin played the Switch version.
Yes.
I played the N64 version, and so we'll have to compare notes on that later. But overall, what were your thoughts on Sin and Punishment, Caitlin?
Thought it was really fun. I had no idea at any given moment what the hell was happening.
Oh my goodness. Talked before about how games are time capsules.
Yeah.
There was a period in the late 90s where the only anime that was available in North America was the utterly inscrutable stuff where nothing made any sense. And you're left scratching your head like, I think it's the worst kind where you think you've got a handle on things. Everything's making sense. You can kind of construct everything. And then somewhere over the course of the narrative, things take a turn. And from then on, nothing makes any sense at all. It's completely garbled. And I completely was reminded of my experiences as a teenager watching Evangelion. Playing Sin and Punishment, where everything's like, I guess this is happening now. Okay. So there's this, I'm going to focus on what makes sense to me.
Okay.
What makes sense to me is that there was this sapient axolotl who's owned by a dude named Brad. And Brad rides a fighter jet like a surfboard. And he's a bad guy for reasons. We're told he's oppressive, but he's not as bad as, this is where things start to make less sense. He's not as bad as Achi, who may or may not be a god, definitely an alien. Maybe an alien god, maybe not an alien after all. I don't know. But none of these people matter because there's Saki. Saki is the spiky-headed protagonist who doesn't appear to have human hips.
No.
And Saki's friend is Iron, who needs to get a better haircut. Saki's hair is all over the place, but Iron has the worst polygonal bowl cut I think I've ever seen in my life. And they shoot things, and then Saki turns into a monster. This may or may not be Achi's fault, I'm not sure. Then Brad goes out the window. Brad's gone. Brad's dead now. Don't ask about Brad. His sapien axolotl may or may not be fine. I don't know. He got ejected out of a window of an assault craft. Then the universe gets flooded in blood. Saki is half monster now, but that's okay. He seems fine.
Okay.
Then the game ends. That's my summary of the plot of Sin and Punishment. Have I left anything out? I've definitely left something out. Do you have any details to add, I guess?
No, because, within a couple minutes, I was like, you know what? I'm just along for the ride, and I'm not going to worry too much about what's happening. I'm just going to shoot the stuff that's in front of me.
Yeah, I really think that the plot summary could have just been summed up with 3 words: don't sweat it. Because the original Japanese version have these awful, well, not awful, I've heard a lot worse, mediocre English voiceovers.
Yes.
And so the only thing that really needs to be translated is some of the menu stuff, but even that is fine. But maybe it made more sense in the Japanese subtitling. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it certainly couldn't have made less sense.
Yeah, I kept trying to read the subtitles and be like, oh, that's not English. Just because I was trying to, there were times when they would say things, it's not the clearest audio in the world either, especially when there's other stuff going on. Just be like,
yeah,
what is happening? Why? He's he's a monster now. And I guess people are mad about that. And now we have to go kill the axolotl. But somebody's going to get mad at me. I don't know. It was really weird.
Don't sweat it, man. Don't sweat it. So yeah, it's a rail shooter. And for what it's worth, I think it's a really good one.
Yeah.
It turns out I may be a fan of rail shooters. I need to be spending more time with it. I think part of the reason why I never really identified as being super into rail shooters is because I never really enjoyed Rez.
Mm-hmm.
And it's widely regarded as one of the best. Maybe I need to try Rez again. I don't know. But I've never really enjoyed Panzer Dragoon or Rez. But clearly I need to get back to them because maybe I'll appreciate them better now. And the control scheme, at least as far as the N64, is wild. But I don't know how it works on the Switch. Was there anything noteworthy about the Switch controls?
It took a little bit to get used to, but once I did, it started to feel natural. It didn't feel too bad. I was a little worried at first. So I played through the first entire stage, maybe even the first 2 stages, without realizing that I could move left and right.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
You skipped the tutorial, Caitlin.
Okay. Yes, there may have been a tutorial on the main menu, and I didn't do that because I saw start game in the upper left. I did not look at any of the other options. But yes, sure. I did eventually figure that out. And then after I died to the Mecha Wolf boss, whose name I can't remember, multiple times, I realized that there's a melee button, which is the same as the shoot button, but you just have to tap it instead of holding it in. But those were my 2 main revelations. I can melee stuff on purpose. And in fact, some things you have to melee, and you can move. The moving was cool and fun. It was a delight to navigate through these levels.
Yeah, it's a series of really cool set pieces, and you don't need to understand the context of what's going on because cool stuff is happening, and that's okay. And the fact that the movement options and the shooting options are really well done. Despite having given you crap for having skipped the tutorial, I will say that it's one of those tutorials that kind of convinces you that you'll never be able to play the game properly.
Okay.
Because it presents you with very complicated shooting situations and very complicated movement situations, just so you understand the parameters of what your character can do, and that overstates how difficult the game is going to be. I was playing through these tutorial challenges and like doing the things they were telling me to do, and thinking, I'm not going to be able to move and shoot at the same time. The game doesn't ask you to move and shoot too much at the same time. Most of the time, it's fine to have your targeting reticle be stationary while you're carrying on your double jump and your dodge roll. And by the same token, if you need to be engaged in some fancy aiming, most of the time, you're not going to be expected to be engaged in some fancy movement at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'll tell you that the control scheme took me a while to wrap my head around, because the game was designed for the N64 in mind.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to repeat my grievances against the N64 controller. But rather than the traditional grasping methods of the N64, where you're expected to have your left hand in the middle, your right hand in the right, here you were expected to have your left hand on the left and your right hand in the middle. Use the two left prongs rather than the two right prongs. And so you have the D-pad for movement, and you have the analog stick for aiming, which is really cool. It's more or less asking themselves the question, how can we adapt? Now, granted, this was in the year 2000, so this was only a few years after the sort of standard that we now take for granted was introduced for the first time in video games, namely that the left analog stick moves, the right analog stick aims, and use shoulder buttons for most everything and face buttons on occasion. That was brand new at the time. It did not yet become the standard. Most people regarded that as clumsy and weird. There was a time when that was regarded as clumsy and weird. But here, it's a very good simulacrum of that control scheme when you only have one analog stick. And it works really, really well. I didn't use an original N64 controller in this context. I was using it through emulation. But it did not require the normal level of aggressive remapping necessary to simulate how the C buttons work and using the A and B button. Like, it's very misleading because you hardly ever use the A button. In most N64 games, you're using the A button all the time. But here, in order to use the A button, you actually have to kind of reach over with your right hand away from... It's weird. I can't really describe it physically, but look at an N64 controller and imagine hitting the A button with your right hand while it's grasping the middle part of the controller.
Yeah.
Which is good because you don't use it often. It's just to switch firing modes. I'm going on and on about this in part because Sin and Punishment looks at the traditional assumptions that most people have with respect to N64 games and say, nah, let's just do something completely different.
Yeah. And
it's really successful, I think. It's cool and awesome. It's simple to control. It's easy to get used to. It has aged very well. Unlike a lot of N64 assumptions about how to control things, like using C buttons to move a camera around, give me a break. Like, go back to Super Mario 64 with the original control arrangement, and it's clumsy as hell.
Yeah.
Same thing with the control manipulation in Ocarina of Time. But here, you're strafing left and right with the directional pads, you've got a button to jump and a button to shoot, and that's more or less all you're doing.
Okay, that sounds pretty nice. Yeah. On the Switch controls, I played with not an actual Xbox controller, but it's Xbox style. And
right.
Both analog sticks move the aiming, the targeting reticle. You have to hold in I think it's R2. And while doing that, if you click the face buttons, the left and right one will move you left and right. So you're like moving... You're moving with the right hand, I guess, and aiming with the left.
The D-pad doesn't do anything?
I actually am not 100% sure I ever touched the D-pad.
you know what, Caitlin? I think the D-pad would move you left and right.
Okay, that would be fair, too.
In the original, you could, if you wanted, use your right hand for movement, because the C buttons
with the C
could move you left and right. And that's originally what I was trying to do, because again, I was approaching it with the standard set of assumptions, and it was awkward as all hell, because even at the time, using the left hand for aiming and the right hand for movement is deeply unintuitive.
Yeah.
But then I did some more digging, and I read up on it, and they're like, oh, so that's how they expect you to hold the N64 controller. And then everything clicked into place, and it was just seamless, and it felt like a game that could have been designed today.
Nice. Yeah, I was hearing, I was reading a little bit about it online before I actually played. And some people were saying that, I will never say that you have to buy, the Nintendo 64 style controller for the Switch. But this is the game to do it for.
Now, a lot of things haven't aged nearly as well. Graphically, I think the character designs are some of the most hideous that I've seen in a while.
I thought the main character was a girl because of his teeny little waist, but no, Saki, rather.
He's definitely very feminine coded in a lot of the ways that he's rendered. Part of the thing is, and this is just because of how video games represent women generally. I'm not endorsing it. Part of it is just how he stands. He cocks his hip like women do stereotypically in video games. And he doesn't stand like a normal human, which, again, most women don't do in video games. Normally, no, it's true. Like,
No,
normally
you're right.
men in video games, they stand roughly as humans do. And women are either contorting their waist so you can see both their tits and ass at the same time, or they've cocked their hip in a way that some people do. A lot of men do too, but whatever. It's a whole thing. So when both Saki and Iron do that, I mean, credit where credit is due. Both the male lead and the female lead stand and walk the same way.
Yeah.
So that's something, I guess. It's just the proportions are weird. The facial construction's weird. The hair's bizarre. It's almost unsettling. It's kind of uncanny. It's past Uncanny Valley and just like vaguely freakish.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen how games of this era represent humans. It's just they were using the graphic resources for just throwing more stuff on the screen. When playing the game, I have no complaints. During the between action cutscenes, I am borderline unnerved.
Like, oh no, why do you look like that? Yeah.
So not only am I confused by the goings on, but I'm vaguely unsettled by how the protagonists look. And on top of that, having complained about overused and grating voice samples in Power Stone 2, Sin and Punishment says hold my beer, because every time, frequently, the jump sound is the same as I have just been hit sound, and they're both awful, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah, the voices in general were definitely not my favorite part of Sin and Punishment.
It's a whole scene. I gotta say, though, that, like, going back to it, it's very short. I think if I had bought this back in the day and paid full price, I would feel very disappointed.
Yeah.
We're talking about a couple of hours, basically. But going back to it from a contemporary perspective, I don't know how much it is on the Switch, but it is a great little action, full of set pieces game. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a part of, I forget what the collection's called, but it's part of a free collection that you get if you are subscribed to the Nintendo expansion pack.
Oh, great. Yeah, this is totally like a Game Pass type game, where if you have access to it through the other means, you should absolutely give it a try, because it's really, really fun and cool, and not necessarily something you might have gone out to do. And I couldn't recommend spending like $25 or more on something like this. The visuals are unsettling, and the cutscenes are weird, and the action's great, but there's not enough of it.
Yeah.
And there was a sequel for the Wii that now I really want to try, because if it's more of the same, then sure, I'll sign up for some more gobbledygook that makes no sense.
Yeah, I wonder if the plot comprehension stays roughly the same, improves, or gets worse.
I think part of the problem might be, Caitlin, thinking back, it's that the game takes place in too far a future. The game takes place in the apocalyptic future of 2007, and maybe it's just those paradigms are way too ahead of our comprehension.
Yeah, that checks out. 2007, it's too far.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that was Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Earth. Highly recommended. This is probably my favorite treasure game we've played thus far. Right up there with Gunstar Heroes. Like, really, really, really well done. Novel use of elements. I can see why Treasure has such a devoted following. They really make quality action experiences, I have to say.
We're going to take a brief break for some ads. And we're back. So now we're going to be getting into our feature title, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Do you want to say that in French, Mark?
So, people accuse me of being pretentious, but it is... No, I mean it. Like, and I understand, sometimes I am pretentious. I'll admit it. But I am a French speaker. I come from Quebec. And so I'm not putting on an accent when I call it Clair Obscur.
No, I love it.
No, but like, that's not me. Here's the thing. I'm not looking at the word and saying, okay, put a little zhuzh on it, all right? say it in a Frenchy way. No. That's how it reads to me.
Yeah.
It takes... The corrected version for me is for me to say Clair Obscur. That's the thing where I have to think about it before I say it.
Yeah.
The natural way for me to say it is Clair Obscur. That's the way that I parse it. And so when I say the names of the characters, I'm also going to say it that way, because now this isn't true of all French words. Like, I learned rendezvous before I became fluent in French.
Yeah.
So I don't say rendezvous. Rendezvous is how I would say it in French, but when I say it in English, I say it rendezvous.
Yeah.
Because that's how I learned it. But to me, this is Clair Obscur. Anyway, send all your accusations of being pretentious to support@aircanada.ca.
Okay. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. You control the characters of Expedition 33 as they go to try to take out the Paintress. Because every year, the Paintress, she's like this giant woman-looking creature who just sits in front of a monolith for the whole year. And then once a year, she gets up and she paints a new number on her monolith, and everybody who is that age or older dies. And this number ticks down by 1 every single year, and apparently has for, I guess, since
Do the math.
Year 0. Yeah, I know. 67?
Yeah, 67
years. Yeah. The people in Lumiere are very tired of dying every single year. And so once a year, for the most part, people who are due for death next year go out on an expedition to try to take her out.
Well, some
Yes.
seek to join an expedition to fight against their fate. I'm not going to try to lean into it too hard and make too many jokes at the expense of the French, but it is very characteristically French in a lot of ways, because there are a number of people who respond to this sort of supernatural threat or strange circumstance with a certain degree of existentialist dread, and with a certain amount of ennui or learned helplessness.
Yeah.
So this is a JRPG. If this setup had been done in a sort of more traditional Final Fantasy mold, I'm not making any comment about Japanese culture, I'm just saying in a slightly more Final Fantasy mold, there would be, the hero who comes to rise up to fight the great evil. Here it's more like, well, life is terrible. We can either wait for the inevitable, as some people choose to do, or we can try to flail helplessly against an implacable foe, which is what other people choose to do. So it's under a very different kinds of lens right from the start.
Yeah. The opening of Clair Obscur, you play Gustave, and Gustave goes to make amends with the woman he loves, who they broke up sometime before the game started, because she is 33 years old, and she's facing her gommage, basically. The paintress is going to paint the number 33, and she, along with all the other 33-year-olds, are going to disintegrate.
Do you know what gommage means in English?
No, I did look it up, and I can't recall.
It means erasure.
Erasure. Yep. So they get erased.
It is one of those things where sometimes Clair Obscur wants to be understood, and so it will translate things, and other times it delights in being a little more, shall we say, obscure.
Yes. It certainly does.
Which sometimes is fine, and sometimes is a little obnoxious. Perhaps more on that later. Right from the start, so there's this whole sequence with Sophie, which is Gustave's ex-lover. And I already knew that something was a cut above in Clair Obscur by the whole way that, first of all, it's very underwritten in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of yammering at each other. I heard actually, this is unrelated, but I heard recently that someone was going through and very much enjoying the Yakuza games. And I tried to like the Yakuza games, but those gangsters will not shut up. They yammer on forever. And if that's your bag, that's fine. There's only so much that I could take of these slab-faced goons talking about honor and the gang and honor and their brother and honor and some money and honor and some betrayal and all that nonsense, where I'm like, get on with it, you guys. Which is fine. Look, I love the Mass Effect games, and those people won't shut up either. But it all depends on what your vibe is.
Yeah.
But in Clair Obscur, they get more done with Gustave stammering a couple times and then looking away forlornly than like several paragraphs worth of text.
Yeah.
And this is true especially, and I've been thinking about this like nonstop actually, in specifically the way that Maëlle, his kind of daughter, is super uncomfortable around Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, this is all in the intro, Sophie and Gustave broke up because Sophie didn't want to have children. And Maëlle is Gustave's kind of almost not really daughter. And so Maëlle looks at this is never addressed in text. Maëlle never looks at Gustave and says, well, Gustave, Sophie was great, but here's the thing, it's because I think I never really wanted to. It's all done in just this very sort of almost indie film way of not stated, of awkward looks, of forlorn glances, things here. And it's just, I find it gutting and very, very moving.
Yeah, I definitely felt that it was very effective. Like, I mean, that whole opening sequence just, it took me out. Like, I was, yeah.
And it's also just stunningly beautiful. Like, everything in Clair Obscur is relentlessly, stunningly beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
These weird visuals that are simultaneously bizarre and otherworldly and gorgeous. It reminds me of an awful lot of some of the vibes that I got of playing Elden Ring, where you never expected what you'd see around the next corner.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Clair Obscur, you don't have that same sense of exploration, more on that later, I suppose, that I got at Elden Ring. But nonetheless, you would just have these incredible vistas of the Eiffel Tower is broken and curving, and
yeah, it looks like half melted. It looks wild.
And nothing really quite makes sense, but at the same time, it's all vaguely familiar, and it's just rendered so very well visually. It's unbelievably gorgeous in every single frame. It's marvelous.
Yeah. I know, actually, I was shocked that they don't have a photo mode. Like,
oh, really?
For such a... It's not the first time that a really gorgeous game hasn't had a photo mode, but I was quite surprised.
Frankly, I might have missed it anyway, because I suppose this would be as good a time as any to go on to the gameplay elements of Clair Obscur.
Sure.
And it has one of the worst menu systems I've seen in years.
Oh, like the main menu?
Yeah, just equipping things, using or not using items. It's real bad. Now, part of this, frankly, is I've been spoiled by the Persona games and by Metaphor ReFantazio, because Atlas spends a lot of time getting the graphical interface right, making it look good and making it easy to navigate, which is absolutely what you need to do. And the in-battle interface looks superficially a little bit like how Persona 5 works. Mm-hmm. This similarity evaporates the moment you try to interface with anything, and it becomes a cumbersome chore. I am many hours into Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and I still, when opening up the menu, cannot reliably identify what I am highlighting. It's that bad.
Oh god, me too. I hit start. I'm like, okay, hit left. Oh, okay, I'm on that character now. Okay, now I know where to go. Like, I cannot tell what on earth is selected when the menu first opens, no matter what. I realize that there's technically something showing you, but it is not obvious. Or at least not obvious enough.
It's unforgivable. It's an RPG. Your menus have to be on point. And they're really bad.
Yeah.
And you have to spend a fair amount of time, because Clair Obscur revels in weird subsystems. Mm-hmm. It's not as dense as some of your really, really, really super dense tactical RPGs, right? There's not like as many numbers to navigate, for example, as you might in something like a Fire Emblem game, or worse yet, something like Unicorn Overlord. But there's this element of Pictos, never explained in universe, and Lumina, never explained in universe. And there's this trade-off between the two. If you equip it as a Picto, then it doesn't cost you Lumina. If you equip it as Lumina, it costs you something else. And there's no one screen that shows you both of these things. And accessing the Lumina menu, which is one of the core things, involves pressing left stick on a different submenu? What the hell, guys? This is not cool.
Yeah, right. To be able to go back and forth between... Yeah, I don't know. So I pressed left stick once by accident, and that happened. I was like, oh, how'd I get here? And then I never did it again. So normally I just painstakingly, tap right on the stick until I get into the Lumina area, and then I hit A to edit. Or the bottom.
It is a stinging condemnation of your game when one of the key ways that you interface with it is still clumsy or borderline inscrutable double-digit hours into the experience.
Yeah.
Again, unforgivable. Was it possible for them to maintain this level of stunning visuals and still devote more resources to the UI design? I don't know, maybe. But as a gamer, it's very frustrating. and it makes me not really want to play the game. like sometimes, I'm serious, not infrequently I'm here struggling through these things like, maybe this should have been a walking sim. I don't know.
Yeah, so my feelings aren't quite that harsh, meaning I don't like the menus, because like you said, they're bad, but I'm able to just look past it. Like, it's fine. I'll struggle with the menu for a couple minutes. That said, I haven't spent as much time doing stuff like crafting really nice builds for each of the characters, just because that is a lot of menu jumping around, and I don't necessarily want to spend my time doing that. So I'm just kind of going with whatever I YOLO by myself.
Yeah, the game makes you not want to play it.
I want to play the rest of the game.
No, I understand that completely.
Okay,
I'm there
okay.
with you.
All right.
But what I'm hearing you say, and I think this is a harsh but fair characterization of what you said, is that the menu design makes you ill-inclined to interact with the stuff controlled by the menu. And so you're not interested in any element of build crafting or of customization because it's too painful because they made it bad.
Yeah, and the number of times, I guess, thinking back, like, that I just didn't edit my Luminas because even though I had 20 points, it's like, it's fine. I'm not struggling that much right now.
So having ragged on that a lot,
yeah.
What do you think about the actual combat, which is the primary way that one plays the game?
I really enjoy the combat. I like how different each of the characters are. Sometimes I don't like how those characters play. There's one character in particular that I just struggle with all the time, and it's fine. But I love Maëlle, how her, her stance dancing goes, like each round that she has. And then Luna, she's interesting because when you cast her spells, they generate stains of certain elements, and then those stains can get consumed to make spells better. And I think that's cool. She has fallen off for me a little bit as the game progresses. Like, I played exclusively with, like, her, Maëlle, and Gustave for, I don't even know, through the first act at least. But at this point, I'm like, you're cool, but I have these other fun new toys to play with. But I really like how each of them plays differently. I do find the combat pretty challenging. I'm not good at parrying, and parrying feels very important. And there's certain enemies where I can learn, like, oh, okay, its hand just curled a little bit. That's when I hit the parry button. But when I come across new enemies, I'm like, well, let's see if I'm dying right now or not. Because I'm not good at it, but I still find it fun.
So with respect to the character minigames, the character subsystems, I'm of two minds. I really appreciate the asymmetry, but at the same time, it's perhaps half a step past what I can comfortably keep in my head. Mm-hmm. So I'm usually able to get them to synergize with their own abilities, but then using their abilities to correctly synergize with other characters. Like, normally I can do one of those two things, but seldom both. So, like, one of my characters is just off managing their own subsystems. Another character, I let their subsystems lapse because they're there to primarily interact with another character's subsystem. It's a whole thing. But I appreciate how it's done. Then there's the whole dodging, parrying, jumping thing. Mm-hmm. When I first started playing Clair Obscur, I thought this was going to be the kind of thing where if you're good at dodging, that's going to make combat a lot easier, but it wasn't going to be strictly necessary. And then I started encountering some of the bosses. Mm-hmm. And too many of the bosses are dodge or you will lose. Because a lot of them have one-hit kills. Okay, fine. But then they're animated, not entirely the same way, but somewhat similarly to a lot of the Soulsborne games. They are non-human antagonists. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're not even humanoid. And they move in weird ways. And you're telling me I'm supposed to be able to react to when the attack is coming, especially when... And I kind of understand why they did it this way, and sometimes it's helpful, but sometimes it's obnoxious, when they spend like 5 seconds winding up.
Yeah.
Like, their fist, or fist equivalent, is cocked at shoulder level for like 3 full seconds before they actually do the attack, and here I am spamming the dodge button because I'm panicking. I don't know what I don't know when it's coming. It's like, they're like, I'm gonna hit you. I'm like, I know you are, I just don't know when.
Yeah, I fought this one enemy today. And she, like, raises up her arms, and she's got one sword in each arm, and one of the swords lights up. I'm like, okay, parry. Then the other sword lights up, like, parry. It's like, and then she winds back more. I'm like, parry. And then she starts spinning. I'm like, fuck.
Sometimes it's done really well. I fought a boss who it was a sub boss, really.
Yeah.
Every shot was a one-shot kill, but the way that it sort of ramped up to the attack was it was flash, shot. And so the timing was perfectly transparent. Mm-hmm. It wasn't trivial, but at least I knew what the timing was because the wind-up was telling me the cadence of when the attack was going to come.
Yeah.
So I was like, graphic dodge. That's fine. They introduced this third method of avoiding damage, the jump, which, if anything, is the easiest of all because it at least gives you a specific graphical sigil that's common across all the enemies.
Yeah.
And that's when you hit the jump button.
It's very forgiving timing-wise, too, yeah.
And it's more forgiving timing-wise. I'm like, it's so weird. There's this dynamic where so many of the bosses that I've encountered, you learn to dodge or you're just going to die every time. And I find those so frustrating. And I'm not a fan of that dynamic. I wish they had recalibrated things so that it was more like added gravy on top of a combat rather than this is the only way you can proceed.
Are these like story bosses or optional, like off the beaten path bosses?
Once it's been a story boss.
Okay.
And that was the moment when I was like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
I don't think this was a good design choice. Editorially, I strongly like if it was all side bosses, fine, whatever. Just keep me on the normal path. I really don't like the increasingly pervasive influence that parrying is having across all kinds of... No, I mean it.
Yeah.
It's really, really annoying. Again, I will point to Elden Ring. Because in Elden Ring, if you wanted to go and parry things, that's fine. That's on you. If you'd rather just have a huge honking shield and just not have to time anything and just hide behind your shield, you could do that.
Yeah.
That was an option. That's a build you could do. If you wanted to kind of split the difference and dodge roll things, that was available too. But in games like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, in games like Clair Obscur, in rhythm games, for example, but rhythm games is okay, that's the entire game.
Yeah.
You learn this precise timing or you die. Not my vibe.
Yep, that's very understandable. I don't know. I've managed to get through. I have hit the game over screen more times in Clair Obscur than I think any other game I can think of in recent history. Okay. So one of my friends actually mentioned this, and then after he mentioned it, like I was mad that this feature didn't exist. Metaphor Refantasio lets you just restart a fight. You know things are going bad, you restart, and you can just go back to the beginning. Clair Obscur? No. You have to either manually close the game, or you just have to die, and then reload. That is a very frustrating waste of time to me when I know that I'm going to lose a fight. Like, as soon as my first group of expeditioners is down, when I call in the last stand, it's like, I know that the fight is lost at that point unless the boss has, 10% health.
The JV is not going to cut it. The people I knew how they worked couldn't take down the boss.
Yeah.
These people that I don't remember how their mini games work. They're not going to do the job.
No.
Yeah. At least the save points are frequent.
Yes.
Typically, the save point is just before the boss fight anyway. But yes, I agree. There should have been some easier way to start it.
Speaking of saving, I am very grateful that the saving is as frequent as it is, because I have had Expedition 33 crash so many times.
Really?
Yes. At least once a day when I play. And yesterday, I think it crashed 3 or 4 times. And maybe Clair Obscur is just doing me a favor, because it's like, oh, Caitlin, it's 12:15 a.m. and you have work tomorrow. And if I don't crash on you now, you're just going to be awake till 1. I often will end a session of play with a crash. I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, I got the hint. I'm going.
So this actually is going to be returning back to some of the plot elements of Clair Obscur, because I've not had that problem. I tend to play Clair Obscur in 1 hour to 2 hour bursts. Mm-hmm. Typically, the way that it happens is as follows. I remember loading up Clair Obscur for the first time, and I was about 30 minutes into it, and I for the first time I saw the Streets of Lumière, and I'm like, this is one of the most stunning achievements I've seen in years.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This I am fully ready to be sucked in. That's before all the frustrations started setting in, right? But one of the things that boots me out of a play session of Clair Obscur faster than anything else is they don't handle the tonal variances very well at all. So Expedition 33 hits the beach, and it does, again, very understated, very underwritten, supremely well done storytelling. And then 30 minutes later, we're in madcap goofy comedy with the Gestrels, who at times are legit funny. But when they were first introduced, I was expecting the overall tone of the game, or perhaps this was just projection, to be 10% Gestrels, 90% intro with the gommage. Instead, what we get is closer to 50-50, frankly. Because you're interacting with the Gestrels. There's a whole bunch of other indigenous people who are comic relief, who are very goofy, very sort of bande dessinée, sort of wacky hijinks. And the main cast reacts to them in that jest, like, oh, these guys are cute. Oh, what's going on? Oh, you're so wacky and silly. And that's fine. There's just a lot more of it than I would like. And that is usually what convinces me to put the controller down and go do something else. And then I remember how beautiful it can be, and that's what brings me back.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the dynamic, the back and forth that I've been having so far with Clair Obscur. Does that make any sense?
It does. I have experienced emotional whiplash at times, going from like, oh my god, that was heartbreaking, and like I can't stop thinking about it. Like, I'm actively upset to Gestrels or somebody just doing something funny, and it's like, oh man, like I wasn't ready for that. Like I needed more time. I needed more time to be sad. Yeah.
It's a hard balance to strike. Some shows and some stories can do it. I mean, I've mentioned before a number of times our mutual love of Steven Universe. Steven Universe pulls it off. Where sometimes it's talking about desperately sad things and people's reaction to it, and the next it's cracking jokes about a hamburger backpack or whatever. I think some shows like The Melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi does it sometimes too, where it's kind of goofy on the surface level, but if you poke a little bit deeper, you realize that there's a lot more else going on. And that's fine. I don't think Clair Obscur pulls it off very well. There's a lot of, as you say, emotional whiplash, and it's just, they have these heartbreaking, brilliant, beautiful, gorgeous scenes that sometimes just consist of like 2 lines of dialogue and Gustave and Maël looking awkward. I love the relationship, by the way. I love everything. Whenever those two are on screen interacting with each other, whether they're giving each other a hard time or Maël reflecting on how pointless life is and Gustave feeling terrible that his kind of daughter feels this way about. Anyway, I could watch them endlessly.
Yep.
And then some other mascot type character bumbles in from off screen speaking a gibberish language, and they might as well be playing the Chocobo theme in the background. I understand why they're there. It's fine. And again, as I say, sometimes they're past the amusing, but I was hoping for more like a 10 to 90 rather than 50-50 distribution.
Yeah, and the main game doesn't even have to be just like all melancholy all the time. I mean, there's moments of lightness sometimes, even in the sad times when, Maël will look up at Gustave and give him a little smile. Like, it doesn't always have to be 100% bleak, but it doesn't have to go to like slapstick comedy immediately after either.
First time I really came to grips with what was going on. And frankly, my estimation of Clair Obscur diminished considerably, was when I realized how long the game expected me to spend in the Gestrel village. And I'm like, oh, you're really making this a thing now? Okay. And then you go from the Gestrel village into something else that's more or less the same in terms of vibe. And again, a lot of it was okay. A lot of it was cool in isolation, but it's just, I wanted to get back. I didn't feel like I was doing Expedition 33 anymore. I felt like I was in a Lewis Carroll story. And that's okay. That's a story worth telling.
Yeah.
It's a mismatch with my expectations, and it's a mismatch that was in part fueled by the incredible opening.
Yeah. So the only other thing that I want to complain about briefly with Clair Obscur is the mini games, particularly beach volleyball and platforming nonsense, are the most unfun bullshit I have ever experienced. And they're completely optional. They're completely optional. You don't have to do them. And all you do, you get, okay, I don't even want to say what you get in case people think that's spoilers. But it's unimportant. But
Yeah.
it was so annoying. I was so, like, I had sunk cost fallacy for sure going on here. But yeah, for how good the rest of the game is, like, how could the mini games be so horrible?
Well, it's part of a feature creep that I think Clair Obscur thinks it has to do. Because, for example, your main character, when exploring the overworld, can jump. And 99% of the time, the levels are designed in such a way that you cannot jump on something that is clearly jumpable.
Yeah.
And this is me it doesn't cause a whole degree of frustration. It just causes me to shrug and say, well, this isn't clumsy game design. Don't let me jump then. Whatever. Like, because again, I keep going back to Elden Ring. The platforming in Elden Ring was pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't great, wasn't spectacular. This is no like Mario game or what have you. But if you see something and you think maybe it's worth trying to jump to see if I can get to that area of the map, it was worth your while. In Clair Obscur, there's this big open world, and there's this 2-foot-tall impediment. I can't jump over that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. Then why let me jump in the first place? This is just clumsy and awkward.
Yeah, you eventually kind of get a sense for this is a surface you can jump on, and this is not a surface you can jump on. But even at this point, I am about 26 hours into it or something, maybe. Even at this point, I'm still like, ooh, can I jump up? Nope. Okay. Nope. Carrying on.
Yeah. And this is true not just of jumping the overworld. I was reminded a little bit about how it wants to have a system whereby you can ambush some monsters or get ambushed by monsters. And it works. It's fine. It's functional. But it made me miss how much better it works in, say, Metaphor Refantasio.
Yeah.
Which has an almost like action RPG element layered on top of it. But Clair Obscur kind of gestures at something like that, but doesn't really follow through. Like, at its heart, Clair Obscur is a very linear, extremely pretty walking experience punctuated by tactical combat. And frankly, even the linear walking sequences, I frequently find myself getting lost. I don't know why. I think it's some weird combination of an absence of a map feature and the fact that although the visuals are spectacular, there's not a whole lot of landmarks within a specific section of the map. And so I'm frequently lost. I'm just walking along a path, and then there are the combat sequences, and then there are the dialogue sequences and what have you. But anytime it tries to go past that, sometimes I roll my eyes, frankly.
I was reading a little bit about the lack of a map, and that was a purposeful choice, blah, 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 blah. But I hate it so much. I just hate not being able to tell, did I go down that path or not? Because, I mean, I don't know, maybe 23-year-olds can remember if they've gone down that path 5 minutes before, but I can't. So sometimes I'll go.
I hate to break it to you, Caitlin. Social media has broken all of our brains. They don't have any short-term memory either.
Oh, man. Because, at this point,
we've all been destroyed by the internet.
That's absolutely true. But I look down a path, I'm like, okay, no enemies, so maybe I did go down this way, but like, let's go. Oh, nope, okay, there is something around the corner. And there's stuff to find if you do explore down all of these areas, but it's difficult to know if you've done it.
I am vaguely tempted. I don't know if I'll ever do it. I probably won't follow through because I never do this, but I'm more tempted than I have been by other games in recent memory to turn the difficulty down to easy and just not go down side paths at all, and not even bother to try to exhaustively look at anything and just aggressively pursue the next story beat. Who knows if I'll do that?
Yeah, I'm just playing on normal. I've been kind of alternating between, going hard on the story, and then like over the weekend, I doubled back and I went all the way back to the very first dungeon, and I went through it again. I knew that there was a powerful enemy that I'd skipped the first time because, I don't know, I got close to it and Luna was like, oh, he looks strong. I'm like, okay, never mind. And I one-shot him this time around. Like, maybe I could have beat him back then. I don't know. And it has been fun to go back and re-explore areas. But, I don't know. I desperately wish there was a map.
Well, we are not done with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. We have decided that rather than go back to it in a few months, we're going to be talking about it again next week, because Caitlin's not ready to put it down for certain, and I'm still sufficiently intrigued to go back and see how things develop. I have been quasi-spoiled for a couple of things that happen in them, but I'm very curious to see how they all shake out. And more to follow. We'll see if our frustrations mount or if they are alleviated. Caitlin's further along than I am, so maybe I'll get used to things, or maybe I'll just double down and feel even worse about my complaints later, or maybe by then my brain will have been broken and I'll just be speaking in gestural gibberish when we reconvene next week.
It's possible. We'll see what happens.
So that's Clair Obscur Expedition 33. More to follow. So we now move on to some shameless hyping of upcoming titles, aka Shout. Caitlin, you got nothing for us, am I right?
I got nothing. So Mark, what do you have for us?
One of my guilty pleasures has been Gears of War through the years.
Yes.
And I realize full well that as the series has continued, it has become more and more generic, more and more bland, more and more desperate to impress through set pieces that don't quite work. And the writing got worse and the difficulty got lower, and I was mostly going through the motions by the time of, I think, even Gears of War 3, and there have been, I think, 3 more since then? Anyway, that's not the point. But the first one, I genuinely enjoyed and thought was really cool. I remember playing it through on all of the difficulty levels. Such was my devotion to it. And Gears of War Reloaded is going to be available sometime in August, and I'm curious to see if it holds up. I'm curious to see what they do with it. My understanding is they're not really going to be changing too much. Mostly just a graphical overhaul. I don't know. We'll see. But I am curious to see if it holds up in my estimation and whether it is worth enjoying what was characterized very indelibly by Dom as 2 assholes on their first date.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one as well. Despite everything, I have no idea why I enjoyed Gears of War, but I very much did the very first one. And even recently, I tried Gears of War 5, and I just had a hard time getting into it. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Gears of War Reloaded is like. That'll do it for the 49th episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital. If you're interested in supporting us, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ampfad. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at allmybestfriendsaredigital@gmail.com. Hope to see you again soon.